Blessing to have a mute on the list. So I'll mute y'all, but we'll be back to chatting any second. Hold on. All right, my dears. Good morning on this foggy Nantucket morning. Good morning. I know that this morning finds us full of our worries and fears and hopes too, and still we shake ourselves awake and we gather here as one people. How else could we possibly keep our beliefs that each of our lives makes a difference and that the way we live our lives matters? How else could we keep our hope alive? And Gary, forgive me, I too am betwixt and between this morning with all that's going on. Let me start that paragraph again. How else could we possibly keep our beliefs that each of our lives makes a difference and that our lives matter? How could we keep our hope alive and gather the strength to carry our burdens? This time, this hour, this year is what we have as long as we have it, to love, to live, to grieve, and to give. May we gather in it fully and be restored, renewed, and reinvigorated to go on in love and action and care. Welcome to this Sunday, where it is my honor to introduce and welcome Evan Allen. Evan is an investigative reporter on the Globe's narrative and quick strike investigative teams. She has covered police, breaking news, and major events, including the Boston Marathon bombings. She has won first place awards from the Society for Features Journalism and was a part of a team that won a National Edward R. Murray Award for covering the pandemic. She was a finalist for the Living and Goldsmith Awards, and her work has been published in the Best American Newspaper Narratives. She grew up in Quincy, Mass., where she still lives, and she graduated from Emerson College. As I read all that, Evan, I think you have a ministry too, don't you? Quite a strong one in the world. Let us begin and end in love. Let us begin. Evan, would you like to begin by unmuting yourself and saying hello?
Hi, it's really wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Welcome, Evan. We're so happy to see you. All right, my loves, we shall begin in our usual, Leanne Bo, hi! We'll begin in our usual way by lighting our chalice. I'll remind you of the words, with this flame we renew our commitment to justice, peace, and compassion. And though we say these often, let us say them in a way that fills our bodies and spirits with enough peace and grace to go on. Here we go.
With this flame, we renew our commitment to justice, peace, and compassion.
I forgot to ask you to unmute yourselves, but please do unmute yourselves and turn it over to Susan.
Right, so you'll stay unmuted for our beautiful cacophony of the affirmation. From all that dwell below, let faith and hope will arise. Let beauty, truth, and goodness show
Over to Susan and Ray. Forgive me, Ray, for leaving you out of that. You are, of course, a blessed part of our gathering and of our unity as Unitarians. Welcome. It is the time in our service to greet one another. But before we do, we ask if you are new today or returning after a long hiatus, if you would like to say hello. Anyone today? I think it's just us chickens, which I can say now with great affirmation since Paul has told me what it means. And so why don't we unmute ourselves and say hello to one another?
Hello. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Hello,
Paul.
Hi, everybody.
Jeff and Gabrielle.
Nancy.
Good morning, Leanne.
Hi,
Hi, Allison.
Debbie and Michael.
Hi, Allison.
Hey, Henry.
Hi, Lydia.
Joanne.
Hello,
Judy.
Carol.
Susan. Hi, Bob and Loretta.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hello.
Hi, Randy.
Lydia.
Paul, Laura.
Good morning. Hi,
Susan.
Susan.
Hi, Val.
Hi, Ann.
Hi,
Nancy.
Hi, Andy.
Leah. Hi, Bo. How are you down there, Bo?
All right, my dears, I'm going
Hey.
to salute you all again after that beautiful grace of our greetings, which fills my heart with hope, and turn it over to Susan. Just one sec. All righty. Turn it over to Susan and Ray.
And I should really change our name here. So our first hymn is We're Gonna Sit at the Welcome Table, Ray's favorite. And we'll go through all three verses and in good folk style come back to the first one before we end the hymn.
1, 2, 2, 2.
We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people around that table. All kinds of people around that table one of these days. Hallelujah. All kinds of people around that table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. No fancy style. No fancy style at the welcome table. No fancy style at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. No fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. We're gonna sit. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days.
Thank you, Susan and Ray. If anyone can generate a sense of community and togetherness on a foggy Sunday morning, it is both of you. Thank you for the blessings of being here. Thank you so much. And Evan has asked if she could read her poem as part of her talk, so we are going to skip over that. That was my error and not thinking that through more carefully with her. Sorry, Evan. But she's going to read that as part of her service, part of her talk. So please now let's take a breath and join me for the meditation. So we're all riled up from the welcome table, as we should be. So take another breath. And try just for this minute, just for this moment, to put down your lists and your anxieties and your worries and your fears and your joys and your excitements and just all of it, and clear a space where you can be blessed. And allow me to take this time to bless you. Today we show up because that is what we do. We show up. And it is hard at first, like jumping into a cold sea. We'd rather lay on the shore in the sun, warm, quiet, at ease. And we know that this showing up is how we carry the fire, prehistoric and vital and life ensuring. How we carry that small flame to the next place, so that when we get there, we can still, as one people, one village, one nation, one world, we can still drive the cold from our bones and cook what nourishes us and see the beauty of one another flickering in the shadows. We can still remember that without the circle, the flame dies. Gathering, loving, tending, cooking, bowing, praying, singing out the primordial desire to go on in love, in peace, in enough for all. May our gathering bless the people of Ukraine and all who suffer domination and brutality and injustice that marches in armed without memory. May our thoughts and actions and prayers be a salve for the wounds of the world. May this morning break over us with the memories our ancestors have carried for us and that now grace our hands and hearts and wake our souls to love, to hope, to memory, to this moment. Amen. And it is the time in our service now where we share with one another whatever weighs on our hearts and minds with joy or with sorrow. This is your time. I will say for the benefit of you, Evan, because everyone else has heard me say this 100 times. This is part of our theology. We have 7 principles. The last is the interconnected web of all existence of which we are a part. And this time just reminds us of that connection, how our joys and sorrow shape our own lives and each other's lives too. So please, if you have anything you would like to share, just go right on and unmute yourselves. And yeah. And as we hold the grace of each other's beauty and support and celebration and the way we honor and care for each other within the deep grief of Ukraine, in the deep personal grief of our lives, I have heard from so many the losses that we are experiencing during this time, however we name them and whatever they are. I am so grateful to know that I don't hold this alone. I pray that you know you don't hold anything alone either, that we hold it together in this web that each of us contributes to with our love. Thank you for staying in the circle. Amen. And I'll turn it over now to Susan and Ray.
Okay, for our middle hymn, we're going to do the meditation on breathing, and Ray will be leading the melody. We'll do it 4 times because it's short, and I'll be coming in and out with the harmonies. So choose whatever feels right for you when we sing this one. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in,
Breathe in,
I breathe
breathe
in.
out,
When I breathe out,
breathe in,
I breathe
breathe
out.
out,
When I breathe in,
breathe in,
I breathe in.
breathe out,
When I breathe out,
breathe in,
I breathe out.
breathe out.
When I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
Just what we needed. Just what we needed. Thank you. Bless you. I just want to say about Evan before she comes in here that I read an article that Evan wrote in the Boston Globe about a prisoner that she visited and about her own life mixed in. And I wrote to her, not even knowing she would say yes to coming to a service, actually not even having it in my mind at that point, and said, thank you for not deciding what was good and evil. Thank you for staying in that complicated mess of in between. And she wrote back immediately and so lovingly. And I said, how'd you like to speak at the UU? So thank you so much for being here today, Evan. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. And you're on, my dear.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for asking me to come. I was so happy to receive your email and to talk with you a little bit before you invited me to this. So, and I also just want to say I'm so sorry about your nephew. That's a hard thing, and I'm sorry. And you know, my talk today does deal with some issues of addiction, and I just wanted to let you know before I got started. I know it's a painful topic. I've seen it in my own family. So before I read you all my poem, I need to describe a painting, and this will make sense in a minute. The painting is The Fall of Icarus by Bruegel. Most of you probably know the Greek myth. Icarus's father made him wings and told him not to fly too close to the sun because they would melt. But Icarus flew higher and higher, and his wings melted, and he fell into the water and drowned. It's a famous story. There's, in fact, a sea named after Icarus. But the painting treats Icarus's death like an afterthought. You look at it and you see a man on a hill with a plow and a big, beautiful ship sailing across the water. The only sign of Icarus is his legs as he goes under the water in the bottom right corner. If you don't look carefully, you won't see him at all. So here's the poem. It's called Musée des Beaux-Arts by W.H. Auden. It's named for the museum where the painting hangs. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not specially want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course. Anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot, where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. In Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The plowman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone as it had to on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. This is my favorite poem. And when Linda said that I needed to pick a poem, I knew exactly which one I wanted. I have it hanging on my office right back there beside the painting that it describes. I have it memorized and I run it through my mind sometimes when something feels particularly hopeless, and it always brings me comfort. It's a sad poem. It's about how small and alone we all ultimately are. And it's about how in a world full of infinite tragedies, we have to ignore the suffering of others to survive ourselves. And maybe you're now listening to me and thinking, how could this be comforting? But this is what I want to talk about today, the power of bearing witness. So I'm an investigative reporter for the Globe, and my beat broadly is crime, which means that I spend almost all my time talking to people who most of society just doesn't care about. People who are struggling with homelessness and drug addiction and mental illness and poverty, who have fallen through the holes in every threadbare safety net that our society has. People who have been victims of crimes and people who have committed crimes themselves. People who fall out of the sky and disappear. And as a reporter, I can't fix their problems. That's not my role, and it's not possible anyway, not really. Nobody can really save anybody else. But this is where the comfort of the poem comes in. The tragedy of the poem is not that Icarus falls. It's that he is ignored. He doesn't matter. His life and death are meaningless, and they're instantly forgotten. And this is, in some ways, worse than death. We can't save him, right? But we can see him if we look. And this is the hope that I take from the poem, that I have the power to bear witness, and that is enough. So I want to tell you about a woman that I wrote about named Marie. Marie was homeless, and she was struggling with an addiction to heroin. She had been in jail. She had lost one child to the foster care system, and the day after Thanksgiving in 2018, she gave birth to another child, a son, on a loading dock behind a dim sum restaurant in Chinatown on one of the coldest days of the year. The baby stopped breathing, and someone called 911, and EMTs were able to revive him, and they brought both Marie and her son to the hospital. We got a tip about what happened, and I found Marie on the loading dock a day or two after she got out of the hospital. The state at this point had taken her baby, and she was high. And I want to stop here and tell you how she appeared to me at first. I had just given birth myself, and I had a 4-month-old daughter at home. This was the first big story that I was reporting since coming back from maternity leave, and I was horrified by Marie. Pregnancy was not easy for me. When I was a teenager, I was really sick. I was anorexic, and I was very mentally ill, and I was repeatedly hospitalized. I'm healthy now, and I have been for a very long time. But during my pregnancy, I had to work hard to make sure that I stayed healthy. And I spent a lot of time worrying about my little girl and whether I would be a good mom and whether I could protect her. And I was disgusted by what Marie did to her child, and I couldn't understand her, and I didn't want to. I called my editor, and I told him I can't write this. There's no hope here. It's just suffering with no point. People are going to think that Marie is a monster. He listened to me, and when I was done, he said, "Tell me again why you wanted to do this story in the first place." And I calmed myself down, and I told him that it was because when I had my daughter and I looked into her eyes and I saw her seeing me, it felt like everything inside me was new and the world was different than I had understood. And I said to my editor, I just can't believe that this could happen, that a woman could have a baby in the middle of the night, in the freezing cold, in the center of the city, and that against all odds, the baby would survive, and that no one would care and none of it would matter. My editor told me that I should try to do the story. And I remember going home that night and sitting with my daughter for a long time and just looking at her. That first meeting with Marie had been short. I went and found her again a few days later. I still wasn't sure what story I could possibly write about her. It wasn't news, what happened to her. And I still felt sick at the thought of her baby coming into the world under such horrible circumstances. I wondered what good could possibly come from telling a story like that. I didn't know if there was meaning in it or if it was just empty and dark and bleak, if it was something that should disappear. I asked her why she wanted to talk to me at all. She thought for a minute, and then she said that it was because she knew there were other women like her, and she didn't want them to feel as alone as she felt. We talked on the loading dock where she had her baby and where she was living now all by herself. She went through the story of her life, which was as troubled and sad as you probably expect, and the story of her pregnancy and of the night that she gave birth. There had been a part of her that believed when she first got pregnant that the baby might save her and that she would get clean and live a happy life, but she couldn't stop using drugs. In the end, she only held him once before the state took custody. I got back to the office and I tried to write and I couldn't do it. I was afraid that readers would hate Marie. I was afraid that I hated Marie. I was afraid that readers would hate me for telling Marie's story. I stayed late at the office every night for a week trying to figure out what everything meant. I kept starting the story, but I couldn't finish it. I threw my hands up and I went to go talk to my editor, and he had some really good advice. He told me that usually reporters keep their feelings out of stories, but not this story. He told me that whatever it was that drew me to Marie, it was okay to feel it. I went home that night and my daughter woke me up at 4 a.m. I rocked her back to sleep And then I took the baby monitor downstairs to the kitchen counter and I opened my computer. I watched my daughter on the monitor and I thought of everything that I want for her and everything that I'm afraid of for her. I thought about how little we can do to protect our children from the world, how we can't keep them from getting hurt, how so often all we can do is be by their side and face the pain together. I thought about Marie and her baby, and I started crying, and I started typing. I didn't hate Marie anymore. I saw that she was what I feared becoming, a mother who fails their child. I hadn't wanted to look at Marie because I hadn't wanted to recognize her. Bearing witness is painful. That's part of why it's powerful. I'm going to read you how I described Marie in my story. The mother Marie had long searched for peace and found it in forgetting. The brown powder, the cooker, the needle, the relief in floating away. The small dark scars on her forearm climbed the curve of her vein like a flock of birds rising on the wind. She is 27 years old and carries her life with her in bags slung over her shoulders, walking fast between Chinatown, South Station, and Downtown Crossing, an eternal circuit of departure and pursuit. When she is still, she slumps, her blue eyes finding the ground. She speaks in short sentences. What is there to say? What could a person who has done the things she has done ever say? She could tell the chronological story. She started using at 12 when her parents' marriage fell apart. At 16, she got pregnant. At 17, she had a son. At 24, she lost custody and became homeless. At 24, her father died. At 25, she went to jail and grieved for the first time because in jail there is nothing to do but think. At 26, she got out and put her thoughts away. She could tell the story of why. Some people cut themselves. She shoots heroin. Or she could tell the story of the baby. I won't read you the whole story, but I will tell you what happened when it ran. I had been worried that people would hate Marie and think I was some bleeding heart idiot writing with my eyes closed. I was worried that they would roll their eyes and turn the page, but that's not what happened. I started getting a flood of emails and phone calls. People wanted to help. They wanted to bring Marie a jacket. They wanted to bring her some food. They wanted to let her stay in a spare room. They wanted to give her a job. They wanted to know how they could help her baby. More than one person wrote in asking how they could foster him. People wanted to send money for his medical care and his college fund. They wanted to know how to donate money to other mothers and other babies. I wound up having to coordinate with a church because there was no way I could handle all the requests coming in. This is what I mean when I say that we all have the power to bear witness. Marie and her baby could have fallen out of the sky and disappeared like Icarus in the painting. Instead, we looked. We saw her. We saw that we were connected to her and to her baby, and it was enough. People ask me all the time how I can bear to do the kind of reporting that I do because the stories are so sad. And I think of something someone once told me. I was at a funeral arranged by a wonderful church for a baby whose parents never claimed her body. This church holds funerals like this regularly, although usually they are for homeless people who are adults without families. And the woman that I was speaking with was the organizer of this funeral. And I asked her if it felt like a burden to carry all of these abandoned dead around with her in her memory. And she said no. She said it was heavy, but it was a joy. And that is how I think of the gift of bearing witness. It's heavy, but it's a joy. Auden was right that to survive, we simply can't feel all the suffering of all the people in the world with them. And often it can feel like if we can't save a person, if all we can do is bear witness to their suffering, then we've failed. But in my work, I've realized that's not true. People need to be seen. I think of how when my daughter was brand new, all she really wanted was to look at me looking at her. To be seen is to be a person. I don't only think about this when I'm working. When my best friend's father died, we sat together in her bedroom in silence. Nothing I could say would make her feel any better. It might have made me feel a little better to try to fill the silence with something, but what she needed was to be at the bottom of a dark pit and not be alone. If I can leave you with one thing today, I hope it's this. The world is really overwhelming right now, and it can feel hopeless, but all of us have the power to bear witness to tragedies big and small, public and private. And these moments matter. They connect us. They tell us that we're human, and they are enough. Thank you.
Oh, Lord. That was so beautiful. Let's take a moment of silence together. I'm trying to find words, Eben, because your piece opened me, and I'm sure many others, up to the things we try to keep down, you know, that incredible grief of just living and bearing witness. Thank you. People ask me, what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? And I've never really been able to figure out like an elevator speech. You know, even the board's going to work on that at their retreat, right? Like, what? How could we like boil this down? We don't agree on a God or a not God, and heaven and hell is not in our band. You know, what is it? What is it when you need to bow, when you need to surrender? What is it that we can surrender to? And you just named it better than I have ever been able to. The sanctity of bearing witness. I believe that is the core of our theology and of our principles, the sanctity of bearing witness. I'm supposed to do the call to offering now, but I think I'm just going to blubber all through it, my dears. So you know the root. You know what it means. You know what it means to gather in this place and bear witness for one another, for the people that we hold, the Ukrainians, the homeless, the addicted. I mean, this is what we do. So please be generous. Keep our circle knit together. We need all of you to do that. Bless you and thank you for your work, Evan. Thank you for the blessing you just gave to all of us. We'll have time after in our coffee hour. Evan's got some minutes and she will be able to hear from all of you. Thank you. And yes, now we'll have the offertory from Susan and Ray. Thanks so much.
They say everything can be replaced, yet every distance is not near. So I remember every face of every man who put me here. I see my light shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, I shall be released. They say every man needs protection. They say that every man must fall. Yet I swear I see my reflection west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Standing next to me in this lonely crowd is a man who swears he's not to blame. All day long I hear him shout so loud, crying out that he was framed. I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. And we're gonna stay on this, and I need to change instruments for our final hymn, which is Amazing Grace. Give me 1 second, sweetheart. Okay, so Amazing Grace. Number 205, if you have your hymnal. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I
Thank you. Thank you for choosing that hymn. Thank you for that deep blessing. Thank you, Susan and Ray. Bless you all. I'm reminded, listening to Evan, that in order to see Icarus fall into the sea, in order to see those who are homeless or those who are using drugs or those, all the suffering in the world, we first have to recognize all of that within ourselves. We first have to find the courage to know that every one of those people lives within us. And that is also, I think, part of who we are. We find the courage in each other's love and each other's forgiveness and each other's insistence on accountability. This is what we do. May doing it bring you wholeness and courage and a sense of strength to go on and keep doing it. Keep doing it, my loves. Bless you all. And Gary now? Oh, no, Gary won't. Yes, Gary will extinguish the chairs. He told me no. It's the first time I've remembered in ages. All right, my dears, the words are, carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Go ahead and unmute yourselves and let us say these words, not rotely, but feel them and hear them as you say them.
Carry the flame,
of
Of
peace
and
and
love
love
until we meet
again.
Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So for the postlude, we have a song that I heard several years ago, and I said, that's a really important song. It resonated with me, and I really wanted to learn it. But I only just recently learned it for this service. And I think it's a song that really, even more so, we need today. It's by Noel Paul Stookey. It's called In These Times. There's a warning in the wind that comes wailing through the trees, a depression in the shoreline left by the pounding seas. There's a lesson in the drought that brings our country to its knees in these times. We are dancing with disaster when we live beyond our needs and pretend our hungry souls are not related to our greed. Our life's a journey, but it's not about the speed in these times. In these times, we must be mindful of the gift. In these times, use our hands and hearts to lift the fallen spirit in this land, planting flowers in the sand, reaching out a helping hand in these times. As the perfect storm approaches and the gale around us roars, no longer can we close our eyes and hide behind our doors. Our choices fewer now by what we've chosen to ignore in these times. In these times, we must be mindful of the gift. In these times, use our hands and hearts to lift the fallen spirit in this land, planting flowers in the sand, reaching out a helping hand living, there's a promise of a love planted in the seeds below and in the stars above. We must listen to its message, become faithful stewards of these times. In these times, we must be mindful of the gift. In these times, use our hands and hearts to lift the fallen spirit in this land, planting gardens in the sand, reaching out a helping hand. In these times,
Yay. I'll tell you, Susan and Ray, how grateful I am to have you both in these times. Thank you. Susan and Ray will also be playing next Sunday at the Vigil for Ukrainians, so also a blessing. Thank you so much for all you did today.
thank you for having us.
All right, love.